Thanks everyone for joining us today. We're really excited to be able to talk with you all about this topic, expanding early post-secondary opportunities using ESSER funds as one in a series about strategic ESSER staffing, spending, and scheduling. It's a really important moment for all of us, and we're excited to dig in to some really important concepts. A quick introduction to myself and Education Resource Strategies. My name is Mark Heath. I'm a Principal Associate at Education Resource Strategies. Here at ERS, we're a national nonprofit, and we partner with district, school, and state leaders to transform how they use resources so that every school prepares every child for tomorrow. Specifically in furthering our mission in this moment of response to the disruptions that students experienced caused by COVID-19. We at ERS have created a series of guidebooks to support districts in strategically implementing high-impact strategies using stimulus dollars with an eye towards sustainability. We're excited to highlight some shining examples of transformational work that's happening across the country, where districts and schools are making intentional efforts to support students and improve their schools now, while also engaging in critical conversations about how to ensure the sustainability of these strategies once short-term revenue streams expire. The high impact and transformational strategy we're focusing on in this webinar is using ESSER dollars to expand access to early post-secondary opportunities and to support students in college and career readiness. This is especially important now as high school students in particular faced challenging trade-offs during the pandemic, sometimes between continuing their school while also supporting their families through the challenging time. Which left many disengaged from schools and needing some additional support in reaching graduation and high quality post-secondary experiences. This is also true as the cost of post-secondary opportunities is becoming increasingly inaccessible. And so expanding access to high quality early post-secondary opportunities can be a really strategic and important equity move for districts and schools as we consider the costs of college and career opportunities these days. Speaking of equity, we know from research and studies of effective post-secondary opportunities that expanding access to college and career learning in high school has some pretty significant important benefits for all students, and especially students from marginalized communities. A few of these benefits are listed here on the slide, and things like increased graduation and post-secondary completion rates are increasingly important as post-secondary credentials become gateways for high-paying jobs and economic mobility. In our work supporting districts, ERS has identified key focus areas for expanding access and expanding high quality early post-secondary opportunities. As we studied shining examples of folks doing this across the country, we noticed that they were making really intentional decisions in each of these three areas. The first is defining those early post-secondary opportunities in ways that respond to the interests of students as well as the needs of the local community, while also balancing expanding access with ensuring scale to support sustainability in the long run. And so we'll look at some examples of that in this webinar. The second is designing opportunities along the lines of some really specific decision points that we'll lay out here and we'll come back to in more detail for things like providers with expertise and course sequences and scheduling. The third, and maybe most importantly, is paying deliberate attention to supporting students' success, both what we call to and through these early post-secondary opportunities. Our resource guide details what we mean by each of these categories and provides specific examples of what we saw in the initiatives that we studied. In today's webinar, we'll be focusing on a subset of these decision points across these three focus areas, highlighting some of the specific ways that the bright spots we studied attended to these decision points that were able to unlock the challenges that we hear other district and leaders struggling with. The first aspect that these shining examples focused on is thinking about the sequence and scale of their offerings in a really deliberate way. As we'll see in a bit, this enabled them to move away from random acts of post-secondary offerings towards flexible schedules and intentional course-taking sequences that enabled students to complete meaningful credentials throughout their 4 years that set them up for success in future opportunities. And at the same time, this enabled systems to attend to sustainability and cost effectiveness rather than relying on more random opportunities. Critically, as these sites brought definition to their offerings, they engaged in the needs of their students, families, and local labor markets to ensure the relevancy of their post-secondary offerings. The second aspect we'll focus on is their innovative approaches to different staffing models. We've heard from so many of our partners that it can be really challenging to get the right experts in the building to support students in these opportunities, especially if our goal is to expand access and adjust offerings in the spirit of equity. We might think of that as offering as much as we possibly can. And we know that to expand some of those opportunities, it's really challenging to get the right folks in the building to support students. And so to do so, we'll see examples which have required new approaches to providers with expertise and mode of instruction to be able to scale who is supporting students and when that's happening and how they're getting to students to be able to offer these and expand access equitably. The last point here is that we'll highlight ways in which these shining examples prioritize supporting students to and through these post-secondary opportunities. This is where we see them really centering equity by investing in on-ramps for students as they begin certain pathways, advising capacity and schedules that ensure students have access to content experts who can support them in reaching success through these academic opportunities. We'll dive into each of these innovations by focusing on two examples in our remaining time together. These two examples come from Metro Nashville Public Schools in Nashville, Tennessee, and Richardson ISD in Richardson, Texas. Nashville prioritized offering academic and advanced dual enrollment courses at their high school campuses, while supporting students through these opportunities with support blocks and office hours. Richardson ISD, on the other hand, the example that we'll dive into is actually their Health Careers Academy, which is part of their CTE offerings. And they used some really innovative staffing and scheduling that allowed early grade students to be taught by healthcare professionals at their high schools, while juniors and seniors traveled to a local hospital for a credentialed practicum. And so first, we'll look at how these examples made deliberate decisions in sequencing and scheduling to expand access at scale. I'll start first by looking at Richardson ISD, which created a 4-course sequence for their healthcare pathways. You can see here on the left that they designed courses that facilitated students learning in this pathway deliberately from 9th through 12th grade. They did so to ensure that some of the early courses fulfilled credits that allowed students to access and take advantage of later learning opportunities. This means, for example, that in their 9th grade year, students are able to take Principles of Health Science, which fulfills Intro to Health Professionals and Wellness and Health Promotion, both as a college credit and also in support of them reaching their practicum in their 11th and 12th grade years. They also designed their schedules really deliberately, as you can see here on the right. They created periods that were long enough to allow for students to have time to travel to the hospital in their 11th and 12th grade year and still have meaningful time to contribute to and learn from professionals at the hospital setting. One thing that's really important to note for Richardson is that they offer just a handful of pathways that were selected carefully on the basis of student needs and interests, as well as the needs of the local labor market in their community. And so Healthcare Academy was one that came up and that they've been able to expand at scale. And this is a really key aspect in designing for sustainability. The second part of their design and definition that made this really important at scale is that they decided to integrate students from across 4 campuses. This means that they had to align their schedules across those 4 campuses so that students could access and be easily transported to the hospital setting at scale. And so what we can see here is that students in, for example, group 1, this green group, every single day during periods 0 and 1 are transported to the hospital or transport themselves to the hospital across all of their different high schools, which means that students from one high school and students from another high school who wouldn't typically have an opportunity to interact are learning together at this hospital campus. This is a really intentional design decision then to align their schedules across schools so that students can have these opportunities. The next example that we'll look at is from Whites Creek High School in Nashville, and they modified their master schedule so that students could easily access college courses, which was their priority in Metro Nashville, to expand access to advanced and college level courses. This meant that they created a modified block schedule in which students were enrolled in 8 courses. On Monday through Thursdays, students experienced academic blocks that were longer, about 84 minutes, that allowed and aligned college courses to be taught during that time. This meant that college professors could teach students during those longer blocks on Monday through Thursday. And we'll talk a little bit more about how they were able to access the right expertise to support students during these courses. The other thing that their schedule enabled, which we'll talk about later on, are some really important spaces for students to receive support during the daily schedule to ensure their success in these advanced offerings. This strategic scheduling move that aligns the high school courses to college schedules enabled students to more easily access a variety of college coursework without the trade-off of lost or unscheduled time in their schedules. And so through these 2 examples, we can see that expanding access to post-secondary opportunities at scale requires really careful design of opportunities with consideration of local labor markets and partnerships, as well as innovative approaches to scheduling and course sequences to ensure students can access these opportunities in efficient and sustainable ways. We've also been learning and thinking about how districts might be able to apply their ESSER funds in the context of these design areas. And so some ideas are here, but you can definitely find more in our broader guidebook. So for this example, spending ESSER funds might mean providing additional stipends or creating new roles for some of the coordinating and managing of partnerships with local industries and institutions of higher education. These roles or the stipends might also allow folks to spend dedicated time securing alternative funding sources, which will be crucial for expanding these opportunities. And we might even think about ways in which we can use this money to stipend or provide release time for folks to redesign middle and high school curriculum and course progressions to ensure that students are prepared for post-secondary opportunities when they arise. Now we'll move on to the second aspect of innovation that we saw in these examples, specifically around how they're able to innovate around staffing approaches to expand available expertise. I previewed this a little bit before, but we're going to start actually by looking at Whites Creek High School, which has piloted several approaches to dual enrollment courses. In their context, they found that to source the right teacher expertise for their expansion, it was essential to use many different approaches in combination. Here are some examples that you can see that range from a dual enrollment certified or credentialed high school teacher teaching students as they would in a normal class all the way in Approach 1, to other examples that leverage college instructors in Approaches 2 and 3, either at the high school campus directly or by using technology and having them virtually teach students from afar. Note that all of these strategies prioritized students taking classes at their high school campus rather than accruing the additional costs of transporting students to the college campus. This was an important premise of their design that they organized around, which is different and has different resource implications than the earlier example that we saw from Richardson ISD, where they organized specifically to allow for students to be off campus during certain periods of time. Looking specifically at Richardson ISD, they hired 14 healthcare professionals, including nurses and other healthcare roles, to teach students from across the 4 high schools and the practicum experience. This meant that those healthcare professionals were pushing into their different high school campuses to provide that expertise for students in their 9th and 10th grade years. All of these professionals reached district and state requirements for years of industry experience and were required to maintain their professional licensure while teaching to ensure that they had the right expertise in the building for students. We've actually heard from some district partners that they've used years of industry experience as a commensurate kind of experience in their district step and lane as a way to incentivize industry professionals to teach in their CTE pathways and decrease the gap between teacher salaries and other professional salaries like healthcare salaries in this case. And so you can see how these are examples of really thinking innovatively about how to ensure that you have the right providers with expertise and credential and innovative approaches to modes of instruction that allow us to expand access to post-secondary opportunities at scale. This means that some of the do now approaches to ESSER might include supporting existing teachers either through stipends or tuition to complete credentials to teach, dual enrollment or industry certified opportunities, as well as leveraging new technologies to scale expertise either across schools within a district or across different types of campuses like high school and college campuses. Again, you can find more examples about ways in which other districts and schools have innovated to provide the right expertise to their students in our guidebook. The final aspect we'll investigate today is how these examples have made deliberate investments in readiness and real-time supports to ensure that all students have access to and success through their advanced coursework and post-secondary opportunities. This is a really crucial aspect for organizing for equity, as we continue to mention throughout this webinar. In the absence of this focus, we see that students from marginalized backgrounds access these opportunities with less frequency and experience less success. And so it's really crucial to make sure that we're supporting students both to and through these opportunities to really realize their potential. We've seen three key components in supporting students across the examples that we've looked at. Both readiness supports that ensure students are prepared to access a breadth of possible opportunities, advising that supports students in linking their interests and aspirations to their academic and career choices, and real-time supports that ensure students have the right guidance that they need along the way as they engage in rigorous coursework. Again, we'll dive into the two examples that we've looked at thus far, and we'll focus first on Whites Creek High School. They've increased their advisory capacity and scheduled real-time supports into the day to ensure equitable access and success through their early post-secondary opportunities. So again, this is just a reminder of their schedule. And the first thing that I wanted to point out is the advisory block at the first part of every morning. They use an all hands on deck approach to ensure that all students have access to support in planning their course sequence and completing important aspects of their post-secondary lives like FAFSA. They meet every morning, and they have also made deliberate investments in 2 additional counselors and a college and career readiness coordinator position. This has really necessitated an investment to ensure that all of their folks and all of their staff have the right advising kind of capacity to support students in this time. Beyond increasing their advising capacity, they also created a schedule that has 2 opportunities for real-time supports. The first one that I'll talk about is companion courses, and you can see these here highlighted in the darker blue color. These companion courses are taught by high school teachers and allow students on Fridays, when they're not taking their college level classes, to have some additional supports in succeeding through these college level courses that they take on Tuesday through Thursday. The second specific real-time support that Whites Creek High School has created is this campus-wide office hour block, which happens right after lunch. This is a flexible block where all students and all teachers are available at the same time, which allows students to push in at times when they need, with particular questions that they have in mind, to experience the real-time support that allows them to be successful as they prepare each and every day for their college level courses. A second high school in Nashville called Overton High School has provided real-time supports for students in ways that actually look different in their high school schedule. And so we wanted to make sure that we provided that as well. This is an example of their schedule, and there are 2 important components that we wanted to point out. The first is that all students have this PLT, which is an intervention time in the morning. This is when students are scheduled into particular small group and individualized support for a designated subject area that is led by a content expert. And so a student who's taking a college level math class, for example, would be scheduled on some days of the week to receive additional small group support in that kind of math content led by a math content expert. The second is an advanced study hall, which is an opt-in opportunity for students who are taking 3 or more advanced courses to be scheduled in. This is really an opportunity for them to practice skills and content with the guidance and support of a study hall instructor who can help them as they've been trained in and support at least one advanced course. We'll now look at our second district, Richardson Isd, which has really leaned into a summer model to support students to and through their healthcare credentials. They continue to staff their summer academy with healthcare professionals that allows for two types of kind of credit accumulation and support. The first is for students who maybe needed additional support in the prior year to really master the skills and content in their college credit or industry certification classes. And so these healthcare professionals can support them in making sure that they're still on track to move through that 4-year progression. The second is for students who maybe didn't at first opt into the healthcare academy, but who are interested now in later years, like in their 10th grade year. And so this summer opportunity allows for students to kind of both receive readiness and real-time supports so that they can jump in their next year and still stay on track through the 4-year career progression. And so in this third aspect, we see that expanding equitable access to and through post-secondary opportunities means making really deliberate investments in advising capacity, as well as intentional schedules to ensure students receive flexible and just-in-time supports that they need to be successful. Some examples of using ESSER funds right now to do this might include, as we've mentioned before, new roles that are added for counseling or student supports, professional development to ensure that teachers and staff have that advising capacity, but could also be used for some startup costs associated with programs and initiatives that are in line with supporting students to and through. Some examples might be the startup costs associated with early warning systems and data systems that allow us to monitor and to support students in the times that they need with the skills that they need. And other might be really targeted interventions like high dosage tutoring and the startup costs associated with that. Those are some great examples of ways in which we might deliberately use kind of short-term stimulus funds to support students to and through these opportunities. We hope you appreciated those two examples, and they are just two of the many examples that we have in our full guidebook. The two other district and school examples that we did not get a chance to talk through today, but highly recommend that you take a look at, are listed here on this slide. The first is New Heights Charter School in Brockton, which focuses on an early college model where students can earn up to an associate's degree through their high school experience. And the second is in Hamilton County in Tennessee, in their Future Ready Institute program, which has industry experienced teachers supporting students through choice high school programs. We, as mentioned before, are super excited by these examples and find them to be offering really innovative strategies. And so we would love for you to take a look at them, which you can do by accessing the link provided, edstrat.org/postsec. That wraps up our time today. We really appreciate all the work that you all are doing for students and hope that you found today's webinar to be thought-provoking and helpful as you embark on or support others in expanding access to post-secondary opportunities using stimulus dollars. We'd love to keep in touch, and if there are ways that we at ERS can support you or that we can learn from you, please reach out using any of the methods here on the screen. Just a reminder that expanding access to post-secondary opportunities is one in a series of high-impact ESSER investment strategies that we've created guidance on. And we'll be diving into strategic spending, staffing, and scheduling models on other topics like tutoring, connected professional learning, and credit recovery in future webinars. Thanks again, and we look forward to seeing you soon.